Did you buy into the girl boss movement? Because I certainly did. That word once felt electric, girl boss. It was our proof that we belonged in rooms that we'd perhaps been kept out of for generations. It made ambition feel accessible, even playful. The girl bosses told us we could build and lead and create on our own terms, and for a while it certainly worked. The girl boss taught us to claim our space, to speak up and to go after what we want without apology. However, somewhere along the way, this mantra of empowerment became a mandate of overextension. Because beneath the glossy message of having it all, many of us found ourselves burning out, still proving, still performing, still hustling for the same validation we were promised we'd outgrow. It may have been the girl boss movement that got us in the door, but now it's time to walk through it differently. Let's dive in. Welcome to the She Leads podcast, a space that empowers women like you to build success in a way that feels authentic, energizing, and aligned with who you really are. In a world that tries to convince us that success means hustling harder and following everyone else's rules, we're here to rewrite the script. This is about success that feels nourishing, not depleting. Success that brings the fulfillment, impact, and recognition you deserve, whilst ultimately giving you the financial power to create the future you want and inspire meaningful change in the world around you. Make sure to hit the follow button so that you never miss an episode, and come and say hello on Instagram. You can find us at she_leads.academy. Let's dive in. Hello ladies, and welcome to a brand new episode of the She Leads show. Girl boss. Hashtag girl boss. I've been wanting to chat about this for a while because, don't get me wrong, I absolutely jumped onto the girl boss bandwagon, especially when I first started out. I loved using that hashtag girl boss. Even at one stage, I even had some t-shirts created with the words girl boss written on them, which I sold on my website. They sold out. Just testament to how much people loved this theme, this idea of the girl boss. But as I have evolved through my business, as we all, I think, do, I started to question whether this term resonates with me anymore, and just even questioning the phrase girl boss in the beginning. Because we never say man boss, do we? We never say, oh, look at that man boss over there. I don't see there being a trend of hashtag man boss, hashtag male boss. So that language itself, it tells a story. And I think part of that story is that power by default has always been coded as masculine. So when this term girl boss emerged, it was meant to be revolutionary, a way to make power sound more accessible, maybe playful, a little bit more feminine, something that women could really buy into. And I think it really signaled this shift where women felt they could claim authority without sacrificing what it meant to be a woman. I think the introduction of the Girlboss era really cracked something open for a lot of women. It was the first time we saw many women unapologetically taking up space in business, starting companies, building brands, carving out careers that maybe didn't follow the traditional path. And I think with this movement, for many women, it felt like for the first time, success didn't have to look like a woman that was in a suit, a stuffy suit in a corporate room full of men. It could look like creativity, flexibility, motherhood, freedom. It could really look and feel authentic to her. So women really began designing careers that started to fit in with their lives. We started to see a big shift in women creating businesses within the online space versus women really shrinking their own lives to fit in with their careers. So I think this was really a moment where women stopped waiting for an invitation to the table and they basically started building their own tables. Now, I think there is a lot of backlash to the girl boss movement, and I want to kind of dive into what has been wrong with the movement. But say what you want about the Girlboss era, it did change a lot of things for us. I think for a lot of us, it was the first time we saw women who looked like us talking about ambition out loud. It started showing up on Instagram, in bedrooms turned into home offices. It looked creative. It looked relatable. It made success feel closer. Like all of a sudden you didn't need an MBA or a boardroom or permission. That phrase, I think it was a really popular quote at one time. All you need is Wi-Fi and a dream, and maybe some serious determination. So there was this moment where this girl boss, this identity, it felt electric. The rise of women who were finally claiming what they wanted. So it gave us this language for ambition that, didn't sound like an apology. And I think for that, it very much deserves credit. It's cracked the door open for us. And it showed us that we can build something from nothing and that wanting more doesn't make us greedy. But I do think that accessibility came with a price, because once the door opened, the pressure began to pour in and the message slowly began to shift from you can do anything to you now must do everything. And suddenly that success, it started to feel like this constant full-time performance. It was hustle. It was exhausting. Now, a lot of the girl boss branding, because if we think about when, the girl boss, when that first came onto the scenes, we think about sort of the branding, even that, it felt really inspiring. If you think about the clean desks, the desktop flat lays, oat milk lattes, latest fashion. For the first time, it actually felt okay for women to love all things business, but also love maybe the more materialistic things. Like we could wear what we want, we could create our brand how we choose, and we could still be taken seriously. And I think that really mattered, because for years, women were told that if we wanted to be respected, we had to tone it down. We had to be less emotional, less stylish, less too much. And so then when the girl boss started showing up, she really changed the game. She made ambition look powerful, yes, but also more feminine. But then we started confusing the look of success with the feeling of success. So yes, women began to build brands that looked how we wanted them to look, but maybe behind the scenes, things were starting to tell a different story. Maybe on the surface, we were looking like we had it all together. Hashtag I'm a girl boss. But behind the scenes, we were running on caffeine, cortisol, people pleasing. So yeah, okay, we've nailed the vibe. We've nailed the girl boss, hashtag girl boss vibe, but we've missed out on alignment. So we thought if we could just look successful, look like the girl boss, we would maybe start to feel that way, but it doesn't work like that. Because it's not about the branding. It's really about the energy underneath it. And whilst many of us were perhaps calling us hashtag girl boss, we were still very much seeing success through a very masculine lens. We were still running our businesses or showing up in our careers in a very masculine way. And I think if we start to look behind, the girl boss identity behind the scenes, we're seeing success that's also anchored in proving we could match the men, proving we could keep up, proving we could have it all without ever slowing down. So yes, it's empowerment, but, it's disguised as empowerment. Really, it's just, burnout disguised as purpose. So this very movement that was meant to liberate women often ended up recreating the same systems that these women set out to escape, systems built on output and exhaustion and performance as proof of value. And I think for many of us, we are waking up to the fact that we no longer want to prove ourselves through our performance. We don't want to just curate this identity of a girl boss, but then behind the scenes feel like we are completely falling apart. We are now commanding much more from our lives. We want success, yes, but we don't want to lose ourselves in the process. And I think we're realizing that it's not just about how we show up, it's about how we feel when we do it. And I think the problem with the girl boss movement is the girl boss made success appear more accessible, but at the same time, it kept us tethered to the same structures that we were trying to escape from. And I think really there's been this shift where we almost have this hustle hangover. So again, we used to see a lot of these quotes, disguised as inspiration, like all about hustling, like get up and hustle and another day, another hustle. You probably see enough of these floating around on Instagram and Pinterest. And, the thing that once made success feel accessible, it was also, success is actually expected. It's not enough to want more. Now, all of a sudden, you have to constantly becoming more. So it's like every woman with a vision suddenly felt like she had to turn it into a brand. Every passion had to be monetized. And if you were slow for a second, it started to feel like you were falling behind, like constantly expected to be creating and producing and doing. And as a result, women were working actually harder than ever, not because somebody told us to, because many of these women, they have started jobs, or rather they've started businesses, they've stepped away from jobs, they've, become their own boss. So they've no longer got somebody telling them, oh, you've got to work hard. But somewhere inside, they are still feeling like they had to prove that they belong at the table that they fought very hard to sit at. So yes, it can look very inspiring from the outside. But underneath, I think many of us were barely holding it together. Our nervous systems were fried, the joy was gone. We built lives that looked successful on paper. Hey, look, I'm a successful girl boss. But actually, they felt very empty in person. And I think the worst part is how we normalized it. We normalized the hustle. We called it the grind. We called it the price of success. We glamorized our exhaustion. Like, oh, look how hard I've worked. But deep down, I think many of us started to question, well, this cannot be it. This isn't really what I was asking for. Because really, how can you lead? How can you inspire others? How can you be creative if you are completely depleted? How can you ever call yourself truly free if your entire life runs on performance and pressure? So this is the hangover that I'm talking about. It's the crash that happens after years of pushing and proving and striving. And you realize the hustle got you the life that you wanted, maybe, but it's also cost you the peace that you need right now. And I think many of us, we are sobering up. I certainly have. I've sobered up a while ago now, and I've started to unlearn this idea that constant movement means success. And I think the frustrating thing is that for most women, the wake-up call comes too late. Most women don't wake up because they choose to wake up. It's because they no longer have a choice. And this was my story. Like, I had to hit complete burnout before I realized, there's got to be a different way here. Now, for me, it was my body saying, I don't have a choice anymore. I can't keep living like this. I was completely disconnected from my intuition. I was completely feeling flat with my success, disillusioned with my success. And again, for many of the women I work with, they come into this work because they've spent years trying to do everything right. They've poured their whole self, their time, their heart, their ideas, their body into a version of success. This version of success, they were told, would finally make it all worth it. And then one day they wake up and they realize that they've given everything and somehow it still isn't enough. They've worked harder than they thought possible. They've shown up, they've followed the strategies, they've maybe built the businesses, they've maybe leading the teams, they've hit the deadlines, yet still they're standing there wondering why the success that they've built feels more like survival. They've done everything the world told them to do. And for what? For a little sliver of the peace that they thought success would bring. It's frustrating because I think so many women, it takes for them to reach that point before they actually begin to wake up and realize the power of this work, the work of feminine leadership. They wake up not because they want to, but because they have no other option. Now, I've worked with many women across many different industries who have been trying to out-hustle misalignment or strategy their way out of a system that was never designed for their rhythm. So maybe for the business owner, it might look like them showing up online every day and they're still not feeling seen. Maybe for the coach, it's creating another program or launching another offer, doing something else and still not feeling like they're achieving their goals. For the corporate woman, it's putting in the longer hours for recognition, and the recognition never actually comes. So it's the same pattern across different industries, just dressed in a different way. But the same pattern is, do more, prove more, give more. And somehow you never actually create the success that you were hoping for. And it somehow always feels like it's not quite enough. You never quite get there. And maybe you're there now. Maybe you're at that point right now. Or maybe you're not quite there, but if you keep going in the same direction, you may end up there. And if so, if you're that person, I want you to know that you don't have to wait to collapse to choose alignment. And what if awakening, it didn't have to come from crisis? I think we all wait for these crisis moments before we actually make changes in our life. But what if we didn't wait to get to that point? What if instead we made choices from a place of clarity instead? What if you choose to do it differently, not from exhaustion, but from empowerment? And I think this is what it really means to lead differently. We're not being reactive. We're not doing something different because we feel like we no longer have a choice. We can no longer continue doing the things in the way that we have done. But we're actually intentional about our decisions. We make our choices not from a place of scarcity, but from a place of sovereignty. It's so much more empowering when you choose to grow from that place. You're choosing to grow from a state of, I'm already empowered and I want life to get even better, versus I am falling apart, I'm feeling completely broken and exhausted, and now I need something to fix me. Often we wait to that point of feeling like we need to fix ourselves or to fix our situation before we actually seek the support that we so desperately need. But I guess what I'm trying to say is it's so much more empowering when you are intentionally choosing to get support that will take you to that next level. You're going from great to even better rather than scraping yourself out of the barrel and trying to survive. And I think this is where self-awareness becomes key, so you don't get to that point of total collapse. Do you have the awareness to see the version of success you're building and whether that truly aligns? Or are you convincing yourself that, okay, like how I'm getting there now, I may be hustling now or overproducing or putting these impossible expectations on myself now, but when I get there, then I'll be able to relax? Are you convincing yourself that that's your version of success? Because ultimately you will get there, but those same pressures to maintain it will still exist. And so, yes, you might have the success on paper, but it will never feel like something that you can truly sustain. Now, I think fortunately, women are really starting to question what success really does mean. And I think for many of us, it's not just about the money or the recognition. Yes, of course, we want those things. We do not want to dim our ambition, but we're actually realizing that we want to get there in a better way, a more fulfilling, more aligned way. And we're realizing that once the things that we were once chasing, the titles, the metrics, the visibility, they're actually never the things that we really wanted. What we really crave isn't more achievement, it's more aliveness, to feel the joy in what we do. And so I think for many of the women that have already woken up to this work, success for this new generation of women looks less like control, more like calm, less like constant motion, more like meaning and fulfillment. So it's not always necessarily about climbing faster. Yes, we do want to have everything that we want at rapid pace, but it's also about feeling fulfilled once we get there. So I think for many of us, we are redefining success. We're seeing it as peace, as presence, as purpose. Because really, what is the point of making it if it is going to cost you yourself? And as this shift is happening, a new kind of leadership is being born, and it's a kind of leadership that I am at the forefront of, feminine leadership, self-led leadership. And more women now are being pulled into this work for themselves, so that for their futures, the careers that they're creating, the success that they're creating, and also a new wave of coaches who are wanting to also lead within this space as well. This is no longer about proving your worth to the world or waiting for somebody else to validate your ideas. It's about remembering that the authority that you've been trying to earn was never outside of you. Self-led women, feminine leaders, we do not move from pressure, we move from power. We do not need permission, we move with purpose. So girl bosses, I think they're the women that are still hustling their way, trying to earn what was already theirs, worth, rest and belonging. But the feminine leader, she moves in a different way. She knows that her worth isn't earned. She's not chasing something to feel like she belongs. So a girl boss is asking, how much can I do? How much do I need to do? But the feminine leader asks, How do I want to feel whilst I am doing it? And that is the difference. So if this work spoke to you and it's something that you want to dive deeper into for yourself or perhaps for those that you lead, make sure to check out our website, she-leads.co, and come and say hello on Instagram. I love receiving your messages on there. I really hope that this episode resonated with you, and I will catch you on the next episode of the She Leads Show. If today's episode lit something up in you and you are ready to build a coaching business that not only changes lives but creates the income and freedom you deserve, then right now you can request a free trial of our She Leads Academy coach training. To get your free trial, just head over to Instagram and visit us at she_leads.academy. You will find the link to the free trial in our bio. I cannot wait to see what's possible for you.